All energies that come through are interesting, known or unknown. Today's, however, was very interesting to me. And he comes through sometimes, usually for other people. And I suppose it's no different today because this is for all of us, this message. But today's energy is that of Albert Einstein. I sat down and I meditated and I asked for any energy to come through that was willing and coming with love and the intention of healing and growth. And I saw him. Interestingly, I saw him as tall, and I don't think he was tall, but I saw him more lanky than normal, than he was in life. Um, and that may just be an interesting message about the way the mind tends to meld experiences because I once had an experience with an energy that presented in 3D when I was in high school. My mother saw him as well, and he reminded me of Einstein, and he was tall and very tall and kind of hunched over. So that might be why I'm seeing Einstein that way, but I just thought to mention it. Anyway, as I sat and breathed with the energy of Albert Einstein, I got first I saw an atom, not surprisingly. And then I asked what it meant, and he showed me the beauty, the glory of acknowledging when one is wrong. He showed me the perfection of being wrong, the necessity of being wrong. Because when you're wrong, that means someone else was right. Is there a right? Is there a wrong? That's for another day. But this is more about facts. It's more about those incontestable facts that are about mathematics and um, about issues that do have a scale, such as physics. And I think the reason he's coming through with this message is because although many of his theories are still believed to be right, most of them are probably going to be proven wrong in hundreds of years because that's the way science works. It's always wrong. It's right in the moment and then we learn something new and it becomes wrong and the next theory takes its place that makes more sense for our existence. And so there are a few of his theories that were proven incorrect. And not being Einstein, I can't list what they are right now, but I know that there were a few that were proven wrong fairly recently. I think maybe by Stephen Hawking. And so I think that's why he's the one coming through with this message, this willingness to be wrong. And it's also it feels he's saying something about science generally today as well, how there's such a grasping for funding in science that people refuse to be wrong. Scientists refuse to be wrong, or they refuse to admit that they may be wrong because if they're wrong, they won't get the funding they need. And there's a lot of infighting for that funding, which pushes people to discredit one another, when in fact, discrediting one another can push out the correct theories and make it harder to expand our knowledge. But it's not just for science that he's coming through and saying this for. He's sharing this with all of us. Curiosity requires that we allow ourselves to be wrong because when we're curious, we are open to whatever the answers may be. And that allows us to replace what we once believed with a new belief because we're willing to acknowledge that what we believed before may have been skewed in some way. Right and wrong carries with it morality, and that's not really what we're talking about here. We're talking about the things that we know to be true in the moment. And when we're unwilling to acknowledge that we could be wrong in the moment, we're simply not going to expand as individuals and as institutions, but particularly right now, let's focus on the individual. So, in today's day and age where everything is so accessible, where information is right at the tips of our fingers, we want to be the most right because that will get us the most attention. And it's an attention economy now, right? I feel like I'm using a lot of catchphrases, old and new catchphrases, day and age, and attention economy. But there needs to be a willingness to be wrong so that we can find what's right, is the message today. And that probably will tie into your day as well, if you're listening. There may be things that you're being reminded that they require flexibility, they require openness, they require thinking outside of the box of your own understanding. Life requires that. It's the only way to expand. And it's interesting that the most expansive mind in our history, at least one of, but I think many people would say the most expansive in our scientific history. In our spiritual history, there are minds that are more expansive than Albert Einstein's, but he would acknowledge that as well. But scientifically, intellectually, materially, Einstein had the most expansive mind, next to maybe Newton and Hawking and people like that, and some who exist today. But today it's harder to be as expansive as Einstein was because today it's not, being wrong is not allowed. So, how can we move past this material reality into a new one if we can't be wrong in this one? In order to expand, we must let go of belief systems that are outdated. And if we're not allowed to be wrong, how can we do that? And that's what Einstein's reminder is today. Thank you.